Okay, thank you everybody for joining us here for the Rural Museum Network's Digitising Film Archives seminar. So museum collections contain more than 3D objects. We've got books, documents, and moving images that are also cared for by museums and archives. So this online seminar will share stories about preserving and making accessible film holdings from three organisations who are digitising their moving image archives. So first we'll be joined by Brónagh from Northern Ireland Screen, and their digital film archive is a free public access resource containing thousands of hours of moving image titles spanning from 1897 to the present day. Then we'll be joined by Andy, and he's from the FAODAIL Found project, which is from Used Film and part of the Taigh Chearsabhagh Museum and Arts Centre. So that's in the Outer Hebrides, and they've been digitising home movies from the 1970s and 1980s. So it's a great way to show the island's history from the locals' perspective. And then finally, we have Jen and Hannah from the Museum of English Rural Life, and we'll hear about their project, which is BFI funded. It's called Inclusive Approaches to Accessing Rural Films, and they're digitising a collection of historic farming films, making them more accessible to a wide audience. And also, if you are more interested in rural films from around Europe, I've also been asked to let you know about the European Rural History Film Association's online database of films. So they've got over 1,200 works available online. And so from all over Europe, from different organizations have put their films into this database. And I'll be sharing the link for that in the chat. So without further ado, we'll hand over to Brónagh, who's going to talk to us about Northern Ireland Screen.
Thank you so much, Madeline, and I hope you can all hear me and that you can also see my screen. I'm going to fix it that you don't have to see all my silly notes. We're delighted to be a part of this. It's really lovely to represent what we call in Northern Ireland the culchies, which is a kind of Irish term for country people. So we're really pleased to be with you and show you what we do. So let me get stuck straight in, and yeah, questions. I'm very happy to take them at the end of the presentation. I hope you can all see everything there. Does it all look good, Madeline?
Yep.
Okay, wonderful. All right. Well, Northern Ireland Screen is the government body for filmmaking and television making in Northern Ireland. So you will see our logo popping up on all kinds of things, such as Line of Duty and Game of Thrones and various films and all kinds of stuff like that. The mission of Northern Ireland Screen is to boost the economy of Northern Ireland, celebrate our culture, and enhance education and offer skills training for people here so they can get involved in the film industry. And obviously I don't work in any of that. So, but the Digital Film Archive, which you see here with our website, is, as Madeline was saying, it's a completely free online archive. Everything that you can access in there is free to look at with no pop-ups or spam or anything. You don't even have to create an account if you don't want to. It's currently undergoing some revamping that's going to make it better and faster and more colourful and more inclusive than currently. So bear with us, but it is worth a delve. Thousands of pieces of film, as Madeline was saying, going back to our earliest in 1897 right up to the present day. And it's focusing on Northern Ireland and Ulster society, covering all kinds of genres. So in addition to broadcast television, we also have dramas, sports documentaries, lots of beautiful home movies, animation, education, and all kinds of things. We basically take anything that anybody wants to give us and we put it into the site. So, you know, when we think of archives, all of us, you know, we think of depositories of national importance and therefore often reflecting narratives of the official archives, official stories. And it's really important that we preserve those things. But many voices, as we know, are silenced by that definition. And the control of narrative is everything in society. This is especially true in places such as Northern Ireland, a place whose 100-year history is dominated by political unrest and violent struggle, and as we've seen this week, still a thing, unfortunately. And ownership of those narratives diminishes representation of so many people and results in an erasure of so many stories. Our largest collection is the archive of the local commercial station, Ulster Television. You can see some stills from that here. It's lovely to have it. It's really important. We have a television from its inception in 1959 right up to the present day. That's great in terms of televisual history. But obviously any broadcaster has to use its resources selectively, and as Northern Ireland kind of collapsed into decades of civil war, those resources in mainstream media went towards covering that to the detriment of so much else that was happening here. So I'm going to play you one of our pieces of archive now. We're very fortunate then to also collect other work created by amateur and semi-professional filmmakers, beautifully crafted home movies, documentaries and much more. But it's important to note that even with many of those films, they don't reflect all of society, and the very act of owning a camera wasn't open to everybody. And as personal as these films are, they still reflect only a small part of life here. So this film is from the Campbell collection, a family collection from the 20s and 30s. The Campbells were mill owners. They were wealthy industrialists, and so they could afford cameras. Here they are gathered at a point-to-point in the Antrim countryside. It's beautiful, of course it is, and it has an importance. But until small 8mm cameras became commercially available in the 50s, only people like the Campbells could capture their lives. And when I watch this, I often think about the people who lived in the surrounding countryside and whose stories we don't have. The increased democratization then of filmmaking through cheaper technology changed the narrative. It enriches our story in Northern Ireland. Those films show our everyday, but as we all know, that does not mean that they are either mundane or boring. And yes, that is in part nostalgia. We love to see the tractors, we love to see the style, the shops, whatever, but it's much more than that. And these filmmakers, the amateurs, could take the time to tell the stories they wanted to. So in my outreach work, and I should say that I'm the public engagement manager for the archive, so it's my duty to pack up a tiny cinema in my car and travel all over Northern Ireland to show these films, and as we'll see later on, to also get films back. But in my work, people often see themselves and people that they know, and we all have that experience, I know. This is a still from a film by Lisburn Camera Club from 1959. And when I showed this in the town, I heard that kind of audible gasp that means somebody has seen someone that they know or recognize. And if you look at this picture, just in the background there, second in from the right, is a little boy with blonde hair. That is Christopher. Christopher was in the audience when I showed this film. He's in his 70s now. This is his class. These are his classmates. The little girl he had a crush on is at the back there in a red jumper. He was able to tell me everybody who's in there. And that matters because in addition to the joy of seeing people and places that we know, we're also reminded of ways of life that are now gone. And that what we see in those dominant narratives, the history portrayed in the media, isn't a full reflection of us. So we can't ignore history, but we can take control of the telling of our history. And we wanted to share that ownership with the people of Northern Ireland. So that's a big part nowadays of what we do, in addition to collecting the films. So the archive reflects us and our society in all its differences. We knew we needed to address the gaps and the imbalances there. It's not just that people are missing, but sometimes when they're in there, the references are at best dated and at worst horribly offensive. Northern Ireland is 70% rural communities, but the political wrangling and violence that's dragged focus away for decades and left spaces where other stories should be. And we knew we had to address those gaps, not just because without new material, archives stagnate, but also because minority communities, rural communities, women and other groups don't see themselves in there. So with our partners, an educational media group called Nerve Centre, we developed a contemporary collecting project focusing on those groups that are invisible in the archives. The initial phase of the Northern Ireland Now project then was to target communities poorly represented and ask them to show us what they had filmed themselves within the last 5 years. We weren't looking for professional film, but anything that reflected their lives. And that's been a great success. We collected from all kinds of groups, from women, from migrants, rural areas, LGBTQIA, plus anyone who didn't see themselves there. Once we asked for the films that had been created, then people then wanted to learn how to do this for themselves and to record their stories using filmmaking skills and the tech available, which is so easy to do now compared to when the Campbells were filming in the 20s and 30s. And we realized that we couldn't just take the films from people, but we had to give them the power to tell their own stories and to own that. So that has been the second half of the Northern Ireland Now project, is actually enabling people to make their own films. And that has focused on these groups to great success. So I'll play this a little bit for you here now. So now these communities are filmmakers, and their work is recognised and it's stored in an archive, and we're giving voice to them and also giving that shared ownership to them. Their stories have equal placement with anything else that we have. Previously, we'd held filmmaking workshops using the archives to inspire young people to make narrative films. But we knew from our public engagement programming that the archives could unlock stories in memory and that they're an amazing tool for communities to explore their past. But the contemporary collecting showed us that the archives could also be used to give further depth to community filmmaking that we're doing now. So the new films will illustrate narratives people want to see, and the archives would support that. The next step then has been to develop a programme of filmmaking projects that create a legacy of skills within communities, telling stories that reflect their reality. And the key to this has been partnership. Please let me know if I'm close to time, Madeline, because I'm quite aware that I can talk. So it's a sharing of funding and skills and connections to communities, because unfortunately, I'm sure we're not alone in this, but our government has consistently underfunded heritage work. So we work with the University of Ulster, Public Record Office and the Rural Community Network to develop this filmmaking programme. You can see a flyer for it here. This is the first in a series we're calling Women in Heritage. It is a focus on the women in rural communities who have passion to save and share their heritage and the culture of their area. And what we did was a very simple template of 3 workshops. The first one being, here's what a film is, here's how you make one, here's how you frame shots. The second one is to take the participants, which were coincidentally all women, out on the tour of the woman we decided to focus on, Una Walsh. She does amazing tours in South Armagh, and the participants filmed one of her tours, and that would form the backbone of the film. And then we got an editor to edit their film together with archive to create what was supposed to be a 15-minute documentary, but is actually an hour long because we couldn't cut it out. That's the hardest bit of filmmaking. And that came in at less than £2,000 to make. So it's, relatively affordable. And I'm going to play that trailer for you.
Where the grass is fresh and green, where the air is pure and clean, where the gentle rivers kiss the mountain stream.
I absolutely love history. And everything I do is about joining the dots, about giving history as a set of rolling stories where one story shapes you into the next story, where one goes up and the other comes down, but where it is a continuous set of stories that is part of everyone's life that was living at that time. And I think if we use that model, then we give a more honest, direct, and inclusive way of telling our history. I mean, I don't think I need to be remembered in any particular way. I think the work needs to be remembered in that I think we are reviving the oral tradition to some extent. I don't own South Armagh, and when I'm no longer alive, South Armagh will still be here. We are only the inheritors of a piece of our time, and I think, taking it back to that old Celtic thing, our job is to protect our area while we're alive. But it's also to have enough confidence in your young people to hand it on to them.
So it's a beautiful documentary, and we were able to use archive not just of the area and the skills and traditions, but Una herself is in the archives already, as is her father. So, I mean, a lovely connection that takes it right back 2 generations. And that film has now been screened within the community, full house, as you can imagine, lots of tears. And it is now going on tour around Northern Ireland as a masterclass from a woman who knows what she's talking about how to keep heritage alive. And it's been a great success, and not only in terms of screenings, but also that the participants themselves have gone on to stay involved in heritage work. One of them has bought her own filmmaking equipment, and another one, we're working with her now to bring that model into the college that she works in. And we're hoping to secure funding to keep that series going. So finally, what is the legacy of this work? It's an archive that positively reflects many more communities and a new shared ownership. Communities with filmmaking skills and a new confidence that their stories matter and will find a place where they will be preserved and shared, and an increased profile of the archive itself with a new relevancy to our work. So there you go. Thank you.
Thank you, Brónagh. And yeah, we'll have some time for questions at the end. So now we're going to hand over to Andy. If you're okay to share your screen, Andy.
Hi there. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
Great. Okay, so my name's Andy MacKinnon from an organisation in North Uist in the Outer Hebrides, Scotland. Uist Film is part of Taigh Chearsabhagh Museum and Art Centre. And we started about 10 years ago building this archive. I'm just going to show you a short promotional video for the archive project, which hopefully will give a flavour of what it's about. And then we can have a look at the website, which has just been launched online. So I'm going to actually stop my camera while we're doing this because we're a bit short of bandwidth here. So I hope that gives you a flavour of the project. I will now share my screen with looking at the website. So yeah, the website launched on the 1st of May. We got funding from BFI Screen Heritage, awarding funds from the National Lottery. And I've spent the last year really putting the website together and cataloguing all the collections that we had. There are 20 collections in the archive currently, ranging in size from just a couple of reels to the largest being in excess of 12 hours of footage. The footage ranges from the 1930s, with some of the earliest black and white footage. This is some scenes from a very early air ambulance flight from North Uist to hospital in Glasgow. And in fact, this was part of the first collection that we had digitized for a documentary that I was making about the filmmaker, who was also the only GP in North Uist at that time in the 1930s, Dr. Alex MacLeod. And very luckily, he had an 8mm camera and shot a fair amount of footage of family life and also his work practice in North Uist. This was really as part of the research involved in this documentary. I was looking at the National Library of Scotland moving image archive, and I was somewhat horrified to find that none of the footage of the Outer Hebrides in the National Archive relating to the Outer Hebrides, none of it was from an islander's perspective. It was all either kind of propaganda films from the Highlands and Islands Development Board or millionaires' travelogues like Werner Kistling's Eriskay film. So I felt this was fundamentally wrong, and that I was sure that there was more indigenous film of the Outer Hebrides out there, and we started putting calls out to let people know that we were looking for locally made film, and it started slowly, but as it grew, we've now, well, on the website there are 20 collections, sorry, and we have another 5 currently awaiting digitization. This lovely lady here on the right, is Gloria McKillop. She found a box of film reels in her attic, and back in 2019 donated the collection to the archive. And the film was by a couple, the Scots, and they came to the island of Bernery, which is a small island in the Sound of Harris. Anne Scott Anne Scott's family was from Bernery, so in her eyes, she was coming home every summer. And when we got the film digitized, we crowdfunded to digitize the film. We've done that every time since. We've crowdfunded to be able to fund the digitization to 4K resolution of these film collections. When we saw Gloria's collection, once it had been digitized, and started showing it to the community in Bernery, we were just blown away by the changes in life over a 20-year period that it revealed. And the one thing that came up again and again was stories about people having to leave the island. Certainly for young women, if they didn't want to marry a crofter or a fisherman, there was nothing really for them on the island, and they left and didn't come back in many cases. Anne Scott's mother was indeed someone who left and then never really came back. The beautiful thing about this collection is that in every time they left the island, so each year when they left the island, they filmed the same scene of people waving to them from the pier. It really is just kind of iconic scenes that just get repeated again and again throughout the collection. And at that point, with all the stories that we were kind of collecting from the community in Bernery, we realised that there was an opportunity to make a documentary film using the archive. So we made a feature-length documentary that was very successful, premiered at the Edinburgh International Film Festival in 2022. And one of the results of making that film was an immediate explosion of donations of new film collections. People saw the film, realised the value of home movie film, in essence, and got in touch to see if we would like to add their collection to the archive. We have footage from all parts of the Outer Hebrides. It is the majority of it is kind of North Uist and Bernery. That's partly due to the fact that the two collections from North Uist and Bernery are by far the biggest collections that we have. But we are collecting more and more, and we have, in fact, 5 new collections awaiting digitization. And very excitingly, one of the collections from Murdo Campbell and Grimminch and Benbecula has sound on it. None of the collections we have so far have sound. So very excited to be able to get this collection digitized and hear the sound recorded, especially as Murdo was a box player, and the labelling on the film reels would indicate that there's quite a lot of music sessions, accordion and fiddle club events, and Cayley's recorded. So that's going to be a really brilliant addition to the to the archive. Once again, we're crowdfunding to digitize these collections, and it's an exciting phase. So the website, which is fully bilingual in Gaelic and English, can be navigated in a variety of ways, either by collection on this collections page here, or indeed via search function, where you can search by decade. And we have footage from the 1930s right through to the 1980s. And we have themes covering crafting, education, family life, military, natural environment, tourism and travel, and work. And also by location, all the various islands in the Outer Hebrides, the Inner Hebrides, such as Skye and the Small Isles, the rest of the world, and Canada as well. We have one collection which has quite a lot of footage from Nova Scotia and Cape Breton, where a lot of Hebrideans migrated or were migrated in the latter part of the 19th century, and also Hebridean people migrated to the mainland, Scotland and the rest of the UK, and we have a fair amount of footage within the collections of that as well, and also footage from St Kilda, which is a small archipelago, dual status UNESCO heritage site, which is currently occupied by it's a radar base, but so we can search within the archive for footage using any of those kind of categories and filters. People can also see related content to the clip that they view. There's over 500 clips on the website, each mostly just 50 foot of films, a single 8mm reel. There are some kind of edited reels as well, but they're all around that kind of duration. And I'm maybe running out of time now. I get happy to answer any questions about the archive and our project. And please do visit the website. It's an ongoing thing, and hopefully it will continue to expand until we have collected all the remaining kind of 8mm film of the Outer Hebrides that exists before it all gets skipped, I hope.
Thank you. Thank you, Andy. Yeah, it's very fascinating to hear about your collection there, and thank you for showing us around the website. So I put the website link in the chat, so hopefully people can go on there and explore for themselves. So moving on to our last speakers. So we've got a pair of speakers, Jen and Hannah from the Museum of English Rural Life. So if you're okay to come on and share your screen.
Yeah, hi, I'll just share now. Okay, can you see that?
Yes. Yep.
Great. So so my name's Jen and this is Hannah, and we're going to talk a bit about our project that we're doing at the Museum of English Rural Life, also known as the MERL. So this project is a collaboration between the archive and the engagement team at MERL, but also with the participatory film NGO Real Time company. We've got volunteers working with us. We've got a placement student that comes in every week to help with us. We've got student and focus groups as well. And we're all working to bring the Richard Watts Film Archive to rural communities across Britain. Originally, the project was called Inclusive Approaches to Accessing Rural Films, but we decided that was a little too wordy. So it's now known as What's in the Country. So this is a BFI funded project, and it was funded to facilitate the preservation of the Watts film collection, but also to turn it into an engagement project, hence the need for a snappier title. This is actually the first time that MERL has received any funding from the BFI, which makes the project even more unique for us. So the film collection itself was bequeathed by Richard Watts' family in 2013. Hannah will talk a bit more about Richard in a couple of minutes, but basically he had a very large collection of mostly 16mm films, a couple of 8mm in there, but 99% 16mm, a mix of colour, black and white, silence, sound, variety of film lengths, production companies, origins. The earliest film in the collection is about 1930s, and it goes up to mid-1980s. So the collection is roughly 1,800 films, and as you can kind of see from the image in the slide, this is only a small selection of them, so they completely cover an entire wall in our storeroom here at the museum. And they've all been sorted into mini collections. So the MMB that's written on the boxes here actually stand for the Milk Marketing Board. And we've also got films that are from the National Dairy Council or the Potato Marketing Board. We've got a lot of agricultural manufacturers such as Massey Ferguson or Ford. A lot of amateur films from miscellaneous production companies documenting everyday work across rural Britain. A lot of the films are aimed at farmers, so there's a lot of films about caring for livestock or the practicalities of actually running a farm. So there's even films concerning the electricity and how to be more environmentally friendly while trying to cut on costs. There's films that are aimed at the general British public, trying to make people recycle their milk bottles, for example, with the milkman, rather than using them for makeup in the bathroom. We've also got some films that are aimed at children, with the message of milk being at the centre of every healthy diet and so that's an introduction to the actual project from me, but I'll hand it over to Hannah for the next slide to talk about Richard Watts himself.
So Richard was a farmer. He was born into a farming family in Nottinghamshire. But really he was just a complete cinephile. He was obsessed with film. He realized around the time of the transition from analog film to digital that all these companies were just getting rid of these films, and and that was really problematic for him. So he started collecting them. And it was really interesting hearing from Andy and Brónagh, because there are things that Richard was doing which really align with the work that you're doing as well. Like he would take these films and go around and show them to rural communities as part of, well, engagement, but also as part of keeping these films alive. And so what's been so exciting about this project is that we're not only digitizing his archive, but also continuing the legacy of that work, which is taking what was effectively either educational films or promotional films, or like Jen was saying, slice of life, like really amazing breadth of content. Like some of the films, we just have no idea who who filmed them. Like there's one called it's a Sunday evening on a country road, and that's exactly what the film is. So yeah, Richard would take these films, he would go to rural communities and screen them, he would discuss the topics that were coming up with them, and yeah, really create an environment of admiration for the films, but also education. So yeah, we're very lucky to have this collection and to have been funded by BFI Heritage to digitize a small section of them.
So Hannah and I's roles are quite nicely divided in terms of our main, our main focus. So Hannah is the engagement officer on this project, and I'm the project archivist. So I focus more on the preservation and accessibility of the archive, whereas Hannah deals with the engagement side of it. So with the funding that we got from the BFI, we were able to choose 80 films for digitisation. And we're very grateful for Mark Knight at the National Motor Museum in Bewley for doing the actual physical digitisation, since the MERL doesn't have the facility to digitise the films in-house. So these 80 films are currently in progress of getting digitised. The BFI funded us for 10 months. So I started in January, so at the midway point now of the project. So we're seeing a lot more momentum now, and I'm receiving new film nearly every single week. So it's been really exciting to be able to watch these films for the very first time. And often when we've actually picked the film, the only thing that we've got to go on is the title. So we've been finding some real special surprises. One recent one was the Michael the Milk Bottle, which is an animated film aimed at children, but was actually created by Aardman Animations. It's a National Dairy Council film. So that one we really weren't expecting that. So actually, one of the more surprisingly difficult aspects of this project has been deciding what gets digitised and therefore preserved and what doesn't. So since the MERL doesn't necessarily have the long-term storage space for all 1,800 films or the budget to be able to keep them and make them all accessible and actually be able to digitise all of them, a big thing has been deciding what to use as part of the engagement side of the project. So some things that we've been doing is actually offering other repositories some of the sub-collections. So we've got a collection of 14 Shell films, and they've either been sponsored by Shell or actually produced by Shell, and offered them to the Shell archive, which have accepted, and they're now in the progress of digitising them themselves, and they've even offered us copies. So it's quite a positive move actually to be able to offer film to other places. And with the ones that we are keeping, I'm sure Hannah might talk a bit more about this, but often it's because of they don't have any other preservation copies. So we might be the only one who will ever digitise this film, so we feel a bit more responsibility in that sense. There might be particularly engaging titles or subjects that really link heavily to the MERL's archives and collections, but also to our rural communities as well. And anyone who has maybe worked in digitisation or had just come across anything to do with copyright will sympathise with me, I'm sure, when I say one of the more challenging aspects of this role has been the copyright research and the clearance aspect of it. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about copyright because we'll be here all day. But if we want to make the films accessible, we need to know what the copyright status of these films are. Sometimes we get extremely lucky and we know who the copyright holder is, and they're kindly given us permission to use the films in community screening, social media, marketing, or sometimes it's copyright has expired, which is the best case scenario. And then these kind of films we can make accessible to a larger audience. So these can be accessed through the MERL virtual reading room. And we'll leave a link in the chat where you can access the reading room. You do need to register to see the films, but we've got quite a good collection now that you can watch from home. And because a lot of these films that are in the collection were actually sponsored or produced by specific companies, often the copyright lies with them. Usually with films, the copyright is incredibly complex and there's a lot of layers to it. You've got the director, you've got actors, you've got composers. But in this case, it tends to be the sponsor. But a lot of these companies no longer exist. If they were around in the 30s, 40s, 50s. They've shut down or they've changed hands so many times. Nobody now is really comfortable to claim the rights to these films and then offer us clearance. So in the case where it's been extremely complicated, but we do really want to use that film, I'm actually going down the open work license path, which has been quite interesting. In particular, I'm doing this for the Milk Marketing Board and the National Dairy Council film, because we do have a lot of those, and they've linked so strongly with the MERL collection. It would be a shame if we can't make them accessible. And for the films that we can't make accessible completely, we do use for research purposes, so we can still digitize them. It's just that they can only be viewed on site in our reading room. So they can still enrich our archives in that way. And Hannah can talk a bit more about the engagement side of the ones that we can actually use.
Yeah, so as Jen said, the process of deciding which films we digitize was that in itself was a process. So this project is specifically audience-led, which is really interesting because I think often with film in particular, they're not necessarily archives, but film in general, audience-led is a phrase that's used kind of retrospectively or retroactively, and with this project, one of the challenges from the engagement side is that it is genuinely audience led. So we're putting on screenings, accessible screenings in October and September this year. And those screenings are how we run those screenings and what films we show and how we show them is defined by the feedback that we're getting from the focus groups, from the volunteers, from the people that we're collaborating with throughout the project. So it really is audience led, and by working with groups that have specific access needs, we're learning so much about what is engaging in film generally, what is important in terms of the screening, the space, like how we even communicate about the screening to these groups, and how to make the films accessible and engaging, because it's sort of one level to to use the archive and to screen it in a way that people can understand. But in order to make it engaging, there's kind of a whole other level to it. And it's been really fascinating to speak to the different focus groups, to show them extracts of films and to see their reactions to them, to find, there are surprising things that come of it as well. We've worked with groups so far, including younger people with dementia. We're working with the deaf community, people who are partially sighted, people with learning difficulties, and young people. And there are some common themes, like the films need subtitles, they need better sound, they need to be shorter. And then there are others where, because we're also working with volunteers who are watching all of the films and then giving us feedback, and really detailed feedback on the films. One film might be really boring for one person, and then for someone else it's their favorite film. So that is interesting from an engagement perspective as well. And yeah, like I said earlier, there are broadly three kind of categories that we're putting the films into. So educational, as Jen mentioned, there are some about teaching children about where power comes from or where milk comes from. And then the promotional ones, which are also, Milk Marketing Board, a lot about farming machinery, farming techniques, encouraging new techniques, use of pesticides. So there's also an aspect to the engagement which is about contextualizing the films and how important it is for us to, if we're screening them now, to really show like when the film was made and why it was made. And for that, we are still working it out. So it's a really interesting project. As Jen said, we're in the middle of it now. And yeah, there's lots of different threads to it. And it's interesting to be able to work with these groups over weeks or months where we can get feedback from them initially and then make changes to the films, test things out, and then show them again and see if that's worked for them. Which is a really interesting way of working with the archive. Part of that engagement side as well is to use the films in a way that is accessible, not just in a screening, but in a broader sense. And so we have been making small edits and using some of the feedback or implementing some of the feedback that we've already got to create social media edits from some of the archives. And it's really about a balance between, like, it's so important to honor the original film and make sure that whatever we're showing is authentic to the original material, and also to kind of contextualize it and add enough to it that a modern audience can understand and enjoy it. So we have a couple of examples of those.
One of the oldest and most delicious ways of enjoying all the good food nutrients of milk is, of course, cheese. And in the homely atmosphere of the English farm, this is how they made it. Everything was done by hand. That hardest worker of all, the farmer's wife, with 1,001 other jobs, still had to do her share of the cheese making. Now see how cheese is made today at the CWS creameries in the country. It's the same good, wholesome English cheese, but nothing is left to chance.
By the time a boy is 16 and a half, he knows what he likes and what he can do. Finch isn't strong enough yet for my job in the casting shop. You need a strong arm and a steady eye to pour half a ton of white-hot metal. It's a job you can't fool around with.
So one of the things that's so fascinating about this archive is that we keep finding films which, on the face of it, seem so far removed from our lives now. And then there'll be these moments where you realize that actually it's just the same, like some things just haven't changed. And there are some amazing parts of this recruitment film, Is This the Job for Me?, which could easily just be something for now, like people taking a tea break and chatting about the football, that kind of thing. The cheese making is less modern now. But yeah, it's a really interesting way to use the archive because it's becoming a kind of crossover between the way that film has been used historically and the way that video is consumed now. So TikTok and Instagram, YouTube, that kind of thing. So yeah, that's the engagement side, and we are working on developing these screenings as well. So if anybody is part of an organization that would be interested in partnering for those screenings, we are looking to work with organizations who have capacity for accessible screenings in rural communities all over. So yeah, if anybody is interested in partnering for that, then do get in touch.
Thank you. Stop sharing.
Thank you very much. Yes, Hannah and Jen. So we have a couple of questions in the chat so far, but if anyone else has any more questions, do either put them in the chat or you can raise your hand up. So for Andy first, so we've got a question from Jane. So Jane, would you like to ask your question, or are you happy for me to ask it?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. Yep. Go
hello.
ahead.
Yes, I was just interested, Andy, how you were doing the digitization in the catalogue, whether it was something that your group was doing itself or whether you were contracting the work out. And if so, when you get the digitized form of the film, are you then sharing it as a preservation copy with the National Library of Scotland?
Digitisation, to date, we've been using a London-based company, On 8 Mill, who have done a very good job with us so far. But in actual fact, we've just recently discovered that Duncan of Jordanstone College of Art and Design in Dundee has an even higher quality scanner, which we're going to start using with the next batch of digitisation. We've been doing all the cataloging in house, and hopefully we can get more funding to enable that to continue ongoing. We haven't been depositing preservation copy with the National Library of Scotland as yet. I think it's something we'd definitely be open to, but we just haven't had that conversation with them as yet.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you for your question, Jane. So Lydia also has a question. I think this one's for Hannah and Jen. Lydia, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, no worries. So thank you both. That was really interesting, especially because I also live in Reading, so just around the corner, which is great to hear what you're doing. But anyway, so my question was about the screenings, and I appreciate if you don't have an answer for this now, but if you had a location, a date, or if you could let us know when it's happening, because it's something that I'm always interested to see how other people do screenings. So I'd like to attend, basically, is what I'm trying to say. So yeah, more information would be great. As and when that gets released.
Yeah, I would love to have more information. It will be, there'll be across September and October. There's going to be there'll be 6 screenings for sure. And we're also in talks with some different organizations around the UK who may be doing partner screenings. So the best way to keep up to date would be to follow our social media. But also, I think if there's an email list, then we can send out information once the screenings are actually booked. But they will be local as well.
Cool, brilliant, thank you.
Of course.
Excellent. So I've got a question for Brónagh. So at the end of your talk, you talked about contemporary collecting. So are there any films that you'd love to have in your collection, things that aren't currently represented? Any types of film?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are so many groups that we're still not reaching with, and that is simply a question of economics and funding. The 2-year project of NI Now was got some great funding, and that was been really helpful, but it meant that we could only reach about 12 groups. So, and obviously that's not enough. We're very fortunate, I think, to have now we have some great contributions from young Muslim women who live in rural communities, and I would particularly like to see more of the queer rural community because we're quite a conservative society. That's, it's much easier, not easier, that's the wrong word, but it is more difficult maybe to be your full self in conservative rural communities. So I'd really, really like to see some more of that and some more of those groups coming forward. And I say groups, I don't even think that there are too many. There are some pride groups in rural towns. So we're hoping to work with them and to get their stories in there too.
Brilliant, thank you. So if anyone else has got a question, do sort of raise your hand. No one else. I have another question, if that's okay. It's actually to Hannah and Jen. So, Bob, we'll let Bob come in first then. He's just raised his hand. See who his question's for.
Sorry there, Madeline. It's thinking that things were going quiet. It's actually a personal question, actually, for Brónagh. Off the top of your head, and I know it's an impossible thing to answer, but Do you have any film of Island McGee?
Yes, we do have film of Island McGee. Bob, are you from Island McGee?
Well, my maternal side is, I'm from south of the border, but yeah, my family farmed there from at least the 1700s. So I'd be pleased to see what you got.
Yeah, we do. I mean, if you go into the website, Digital Film Archive, and just type in Island McGee, some things will come up. It's a very, very special place. It's hard to describe Island McGee. It's a peninsula off a peninsula. It's a really amazing little spot. And it has the best ice cream in Northern Ireland, in the Rinka ice cream shop.
Yeah, I know exactly where you are.
Yeah, Bob, I'd love to. And you know, if there's anything you want, you look for anybody at all, really. All our contact details are on the site as well. Drop me a line.
That's grand. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Bob. Great to have a connection to the collection. So yes, so my question just for Hannah and Jen was, so I noticed that the films you showed were like portrait style. So they've obviously been edited, I assume. Was that a choice about how you're going to present your films to your audience, or was that just for social media marketing?
That's a good question. Yeah, so the vertical resolution is specifically for social media. We wouldn't be showing them like that at the screening. And yes, they have been edited. For example, the Is This the Job for Me doesn't have any music in the film. And so the music was added. Modern Cheesemaking did have the music, so I just had to keep the soundtrack the same, but then I had moved the images so you got more kind of visual information earlier on, because you know we all know about attention spans now, and these films are pretty slow. And one of the pieces of feedback that we're getting consistently from every group is it needs to be faster. Actually, that's not true. There was one group who thought that they needed to be slower, but that's, that's just part of the job. Yeah, so making them, and that's kind of what I meant about trying to stay authentic to the tone and the feel of the original film, but translate that to an audience for now. So things like, you know, with the Making Engines film, it's a recruitment video, and so the tone of it is quite fun. It's like, you know, you get to go to work and bring home some money and you're learning all these skills. So yeah, having the sort of visual gags of the cigarette and everything was part of trying to stay authentic to that, but in a way that's much more accessible for people now.
Excellent, thank you. And it was great to hear that, yeah, that Brónagh, you're putting those films out there and getting good reactions to people in the film. So Andy, do you ever show your films in the communities that are pictured, or is it more you built your website so it's an online resource?
No, from the very start, it's been about being able to show the films within the communities where those films were made, and much of the information we have about the films has been gleaned from those public screenings. I mean, we've shown both just the kind of raw collections, public in community halls across the Outer Hebrides, but we've now made 3 documentaries using the archive footage, and screened those. Well, they've been broadcast on the Gaelic TV channel MG Alapa, but also screenings in community halls and various venues. There's a mobile cinema run by Regional Screen Scotland called the Screen Machine, and we've been able to use that facility to screen the films, not just in the islands but across the Highlands of Scotland as well. So I mean that's very much at the heart of what we've been doing with the archive, and it's really encouraging I think people certainly have a real sense of ownership. We've been going round since the website launch. We did kind of pre-launch screening events to let people know that the website was coming. Then we did live music accompaniment web screening events as part of the launch. And over the last couple of weeks, we've been doing kind of website demonstration sessions, drop-in kind of sessions across the Outer Hebrides. So it's really fantastic. And we're starting to get in. One of the functions which I didn't actually show was the fact that people can comment on the clips, and we're starting to get in clips, and gaining even more information about the clips in that way, which is absolutely fantastic. It's, sometimes it's difficult to get a lot of detail about what's on the films, especially dates. It's very difficult to be very precise about certainly some of the older collections.
Thank you. And it looks like Hannah and Jen have got a question. So
yeah, I had a question for Andy as well. With the feature film, turning the archive into feature documentaries, what was the process like for that? Did you already have a narrative idea in mind? Did you kind of discover it as you were going through the edit? And how did you decide what made it into the film?
So the first film we made, Dúchas, which is kind of Gaelic for home or sense of belonging, the stories really came out. We did a whole series of screenings in the community hall in Berneray, showing that collection to the community there, and we literally with just so many stories coming out of those screenings that I just thought, that there's a story to tell here, and that's always been a part of what we want to do with the archive, is to create new narratives for contemporary audiences. So yeah, I mean, we started off by we had to get funding for the film to start with, but then we approached probably about 15 or 16 people within the community that we thought would have good stories to tell. Gloria McKillop, who donated the collection, had fantastic stories to tell, which was that she'd never seen the wedding footage, her wedding footage, until we got it digitized. Absolutely, brilliant stuff. And so it all kind of coalesced around this idea of people having to leave the islands and the resultant loss of Gaelic language and culture. And I have to say, it just really, the structure of it just came together very naturally. And there were so many strands within that to tell. It just all came together very well. I should mention that we commissioned, and we have for both the other films as well, we commissioned soundtracks from musicians and singers featuring traditional tunes and Gaelic songs, which really helped hugely to pull it together.
That sounds the addition of the sound, the music, that sounds like something really personal as well to the because your films are lacking sound, so it sounds really like a good idea to have the local songs and instruments. So I think that might be something for Hannah and Jen to think about with some of their silent films and in screenings.
I've often thought when we've been showing silent films, there's kind of something missing. So actually what we've done in a lot of cases is add a bit of projector sound, kind of low down so that there's just, it really seems to help kind of engage the audience. But in those kind of screenings allows people to speak through the screening as well.
Excellent. So we do have another question from Jane. So do you want to come back on, Jane Daniels, to ask your question?
Yes, I mean, I haven't had a chance to check, but here in Wales, we're trying to do a lot with the open knowledge platforms like Wikipedia and Wikimedia, and we're being led largely by, we've got a Wikimedian at the National Library of Wales who does a great job in trying to encourage us all from the GLAM sector to, subject to copyright, etc., to try and at least describe our collections and make them more readily accessible via things like Wikipedia, Wikimedia, etc. Because basically it's a great way to increase awareness of the collections in the first place. But it often, when people see it on an open platform like that, because obviously you haven't got to pay to look at Wikipedia or Wikimedia, it can be a great way to actually garner additional contextual information that you can use to enhance the cataloguing. So I just wondered if any of the speakers today had thought, or were already doing that kind of promotion of their collections, or whether, I know all of this is very much at an early stage, but I'm just curious really to know if colleagues have gone down that route as yet.
But I can say we are entirely online. We don't actually have a physical space. Northern Ireland is the only part of the UK that does not have an official moving archive collection. That's a political decision. She said, trying not to roll her eyes too heavily. So everything we do, Jane, everything that I showed you today and everything that we have is completely online, and our own. We don't own any of the films either, and this is a copyright thing, I know. We only take films that the owners give us permission to put online. That is the caveat. If you don't want it to be online, we won't take it, just because that's our reason to be. So everything is online.
Thank you.
Sorry, I could just very quickly see that question about permissions. Again, we build into our permissions from the owners that we'll be doing public screenings of these, so they give that to us with the caveat that they're non-commercial, they're educational, and they will not be abusive or kind of to the detriment of the truth of the films.
I could maybe add there that our agreement with our collection donors gives us the right to use they retain the copyright entirely. We are able to use the footage for educational purposes, including presenting work on the footage on the website. Obviously, in a lot of cases, the donors themselves don't know what's in the collections until we get it digitized. They have the right to veto any use of any part for whatever reason of their collection, and we will additionally kind of fairly cautiously weed out anything that we think might be not necessarily offensive, but problematic, shall we say. And if we use footage in a commercial context, we get specific permission to do that and pay a license fee. Our donors get their physical film reels back, and we share the kind of low res and master copies of their collection with them. So that's the kind of approach we've taken on that.
Thank you. So, Laura has just put her hand up. Laura Cassidy, do you want to ask your question?
Hi there. It's mainly for Hannah and Jen, although for anyone who uses volunteers, because you mentioned using volunteers. I've got a film collection of about 600 films, and we've got only 50 digitized so far. And I'm using my current volunteers as guinea pigs to see kind of how transcription, like how I'll use them to do more with the film. So I'm just wondering what kind of work you do with the volunteers or might be planning to do with the volunteers in the future. I've just got them basically watching the film and describing the shots and when the shots happen and time stamping them. But I wondered, are you getting them to do more research about, I don't know, if you see a certain type of car in a shot, researching when that car was manufactured, and so it helps you date some of the film, etc. So yeah, that's the question.
No, that's a great idea to get them to do that. So we have the volunteers are filling in a questionnaire, and that includes questions like when do you think the film was made? Does it remind you of anything that's already been made, whether that's books, TV, film? Because the aim of the project from an engagement perspective is to improve accessibility. The questions that the volunteers are answering are more geared towards that. So it's things like what did you find anything hard to understand? What would make it easier to understand? What did you like most about the film? What did you not like about it? And then at the end, there are a couple of questions with tick boxes for theme and content, and that's to help with kind of tagging afterwards and different cataloging. And some of the volunteers are quite restrictive in their responses, and others are not. They'll just write pages and pages. So it's been really interesting to also allow them the freedom to do what they want with their research. Like one of our volunteers in particular has a film background, and she goes off and does her own research and then sends us loads of extra stuff, and it's fantastic. So yeah, it's really with an engagement focus that we've been working with them.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
It looks like that's probably about it for questions. So I think I'll call it to an end. And thank Brónagh, Andy, Hannah, and Jen for your fabulous talks today. And we have shared the links to all of the websites that show these films. So anyone who's been watching and wants to explore themselves, please do. And yeah, thank you very much for joining us. The Rural Museums Network is having a break for the summer, so we'll be doing some more talks in the autumn. And if you do want to join, please check out our website. So thank you very much for today, and have a good rest of the day.
And thanks, Madeline, for hosting as well.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.